Hi again. My first video on this channel for a while, partly because I've been so busy with a day job advising on some truly amazing AI projects. This summer, our family holiday sees us in British Columbia in Canada, exploring Victoria and Vancouver Island, here where we are now in Whistler and the Blackcomb Mountains, and then later Vancouver itself. Inevitably, I can't fully escape AI, and with so many exciting developments, I wouldn't actually want to. Even arriving on this trip where we flew into Seattle and got a ferry over to Vancouver Island, it was impossible to ignore how many of the more established big tech players with significant operations in the Seattle area are providing the majority of funding and compute resources for Silicon Valley's high-profile AI companies. Getting brunch just this morning, we found ourselves in a lineup next to another family. Falling into conversation while waiting for a table to free up, it turned out that the mum of the family, or should I say mom, because they were from the US, worked for a global bank that I've worked with. When I explained that I advise on AI law, that prompted the inevitable 15 to 20 minutes of free advice whilst in the queue and then when seated on adjacent tables. And we also had a few really very insightful questions from the kids about what robots will be doing in the future. The thing that was perhaps most surprising to our new friends was that the EU's AI Act will have a direct effect upon US banks, insurers, and other multinationals. Indeed, any global business headquartered outside the EU, whether in the US, the UK, Canada, or elsewhere, will be caught. And there are three factors that result in this. First, a very broad definition of AI system. Secondly, a deliberate extra-territorial reach in the legislation. And third, definitions of high-risk use that take in a few very common business functions. Working through those, the definition of an AI system in the AI Act is: AI system means a machine-based system that is designed to operate with varying levels of autonomy and that may exhibit adaptiveness after deployment, and that for explicit or implicit objectives infers from the input it receives how to generate outputs such as predictions, content, recommendations, or decisions that can influence physical or virtual environments. So let's pick that apart. We essentially get to a point where any complex computer system would fall within that definition. All computer systems are machine-based. They can all operate with varying levels of autonomy, as the very nature of a computer program is that it carries out a set of program steps on its own. All systems produce outputs, if they're to be useful at all, which will either affect the virtual environment within which the system operates, or a real-world outcome. The only interesting bit of that definition is what might be meant by the word infers. And for that, we have guidance in Recital 12 to the Act. We might expect that for an AI system, this inference must be achieved using cutting-edge neural networks. But in fact, Recital 12 casts the net wide. It states: the techniques that enable inference while building an AI system include machine learning approaches that learn from data how to achieve certain objectives, and logic and knowledge-based approaches that infer from encoded knowledge or symbolic representation of the task to be solved. Almost any program will include the use of logic and knowledge-based approaches, such as references to lookup tables, data-linked libraries, or databases. As a result, we can see that the definition will encompass many enterprise systems that are in widespread use throughout North America, Europe, Far East, and elsewhere. In terms of scope, Article 2 to the Act sets out a range of deliberately extraterritorial tests of when the Act might apply. Of these, the one most likely to catch a broad swathe of businesses is Article 2(1)(c). That states, this regulation applies to providers and deployers of AI systems that have their place of establishment or are located in a third country where the output produced by the AI system is used in the Union. It takes very little imagination to see how the outputs from systems used and located outside the EU might find use within the EU. given that my new friend worked at a global bank, the examples we discussed over brunch concentrated on payments and transfers to other banks that might be headquartered in the EU, or access to bank systems by customers or employees who might be located in the EU, whether just because they're travelling short term or they happen to be based there longer term. Similar analyses apply in almost every other sector, from insurance records or claims to outputs from manufacturing systems, research systems or media platforms for those in the insurance, life sciences, industrials, retail or media sectors. There will be 1,001 reasons why corporate data of all stripes finds itself being used in some form within the EU, with the result that the system that produced it could be an AI system caught by the act. Finally, at least for this conversation, there's the question of whether any of this matters at all. If the AI system that produced the output isn't a general purpose AI, so think of something like ChatGPT or similar for present purposes, and if it isn't a high-risk use case, then the AI Act only imposes a few relatively light touch obligations in relation to transparency and the like. However, since high-risk use in EU AI Act terms includes common corporate use cases like recruitment, performance management, credit checking, and determining eligibility for life or health insurance, a lot of corporate systems will have high-risk elements. So let's go back to my brunch conversation. As my new American friend observed, there were plenty of European accents to be heard all around us at the tables in the restaurant. Even on Whistler Mountain, there will be data and transactions happening all the time that see the output of systems being transferred to the EU. If you have EU citizens on work visas applying for, say, summer jobs as waiting staff in a restaurant, and that restaurant has an automated system for checking and filtering CVs, then it might be running an AI system for a high-risk use case, at least as far as the EU AI Act is concerned. Now, this isn't the only AI discussion I've had on this holiday, and I'm hoping to record another video about a much more philosophical discussion I had about the relative intelligence of AIs, humans and whales on a whale watching tour. So watch out for that episode soon. For now though, this backdrop is just too beautiful for me not to go and explore it, so I'm about to go and get back on my bike and carry on riding around this lake. Thank you very much.